Testing, testing.
The intro in 5 seconds.
Now. Just go now.
Hello and welcome to Entertainment of Excellence, the podcast where we talk about films, TV, all of it. Hi, I'm Ollie.
I'm Thomas.
And I'm Ben. And we really messed that intro up.
It just starts in 5 seconds. No, we're live.
Yeah. So, today we're going to be discussing the Netflix series Hollywood.
Yes, we're talking about Hollywood, the TV series, not the entire industry.
And the numerous films also called Hollywood. So,
I'm sure there's loads.
Oh, there are. There's one in 2020 made by the same name. Alright, should we give a 2-minute quick summary?
Okay, we'll give the basic premise. It's basically about a group of aspiring actors, screenwriters, director, blah, 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 that are trying to get big in Hollywood. And they want to make this film about someone, Peg Entwhistle, who is real, that jumped off the Hollywood H sign. But it's going to be, they want a black screenwriter, black lead, etc. because they want to progress America, I suppose. That's basically the premise.
Yeah.
Set in the 1950s, isn't it?
No, 1948.
Yeah. It's just shortly after the war, and
Very shortly after.
Yeah, so the main protagonist has just got back from the war and is trying to follow his dream to make it big in Hollywood now.
He is.
And I guess one of the biggest questions about the series is, well, is it historically accurate or was it based on true events? And it was based on true events, but you have to take the word based very literally, in that it took a lot of artistic license and creative freedom.
I mean, the poster even says, what if you could rewrite the story? So the whole point is kind of changing what actually happened with this insertion of fictional characters. So, I mean, Tarantino's done this before with Inglourious Basterds and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But it's basically, the film does get made and it's got like openly gay leads, black lead screenwriters, etc. And so it's based on real events. I think it's loosely based on the book by Scott Bowers. I can't remember what the book's called, but so it's kind of based around true people. So there's a few real characters in there, like Anna May Wong, who was the first big like Chinese American actress. There's Hattie, what's her name?
Hattie McDaniel.
Hattie McDaniel is in there. There's quite a few real people, but the main characters are fictional.
Yeah, most of them are fictional. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, it's sort of looking at kind of the corrupt methods that they have to adopt in order to become successful. So there's quite a few, quite a lot of the storyline in the early episodes kind of show how desperate these characters are, and that the Henry Wilson, who's one of the characters who is also real, is this talent scout who basically abused clients in order to, well, for him, they got successful, but kind of, well, he's one of the most hated characters in the show, I'd say.
Yeah.
Basically, exchange sexual favors for film roles. That's his premise.
And unfortunately, he was a very much real person, and his character was pretty much how he was in real life. And we've shown a lot of the relationship between him and someone called Roy Fitzgerald, who he scouted, who then went on to become Rock Hudson, who again was
also real.
Yeah, he was a real person, but the interpretation of him here was fictional. Although he was a big part of his character here is the fact that he's gay and his relationship with the screenwriter Archie, who was fictional. But in real life, he was gay, and ultimately ended up dying of AIDS, unfortunately. So, yeah.
Yeah. So that's basically it. It's loosely real, but with changing kind of what happened. Like, what if you could get away with making a politically progressive film? So that's the idea.
There's also character of Ernie, isn't there, who's based on a real
Ernie is based on Scott Bowers, who ran a petrol station that was a front for male prostitutes. That I think most of the clients were part of the Hollywood industry, so that was kind of their way of getting in.
Yeah.
So it kind of shows you the stuff that they'll do to get.
He's like
these
the
roles.
most wholesome character.
Yeah, it is odd because he seems to be one of the nicest people, and he's just a massive pimp for loads of male prostitutes.
He really
what
is.
What are you gonna do?
Like, there's a part in one of the episodes where they go over budget making the film, and they need $25,000 quickly, which, especially when you consider that's going to be about $25,000 now due to inflation. And Ernie's able to whip that up very, very quickly. Partly putting in some of his own savings.
Oh no, it's 25,000 they want, so it's like $250,000 nowadays.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah. It's a lot, and the guy just pretty much puts in a lot of his savings and creates a little charity pot and raises it for them in like a week, which is incredibly wholesome for a pimp.
Then he gets like a cameo in the film, and he genuinely looks like over the moon about it. Yeah, I really liked his character.
Yeah, I mean he was like a nice guy, but it's kind of weird that he was also a pimp.
Yeah, especially when in the end he kind of falls in love and tells Ellen Kincaid, who works at the studio, basically that he's got cancer and that he wants to spend the last couple of months of his life with her.
Yeah,
really odd for a pimp. So, well, we've still got a few people we can mention. So, like, there are a couple cameos from famous people around the time, such as Noel Coward, who is a playwright, composer, actor, director, did it all really. And there was a scene set in a party thrown by George Cukor, who is a director who again was very much known for his big house parties. And one of the things about the party is that it was very much an open secret that it would be a hangout for lots of gay people to sort of be themselves without risk of persecution. And Cukor was known in real life. It was pretty much an open secret that he himself was gay. So that was historically accurate.
Yeah. He doesn't feature in it much, but that storyline's kind of underpins the majority of the third episode, which I think kind of like a turning point in the series. It wasn't really one of my favourite episodes, but although he doesn't play a huge part, I think, as I say, that scene, it kind of changed the path for quite a few characters.
Yeah. And so I guess there's not really much else we can say because we've been through most of the characters. A lot of them are made up, and the ones that are real have been changed slightly to show a more optimistic view of what could have been in the past. And I suppose the only other big question that we've seen circulating is will it have a season 2? And
hopefully not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'd say. It's not a bad show at all. I'd say it's pretty good, but it doesn't need a second season. It's kind of all tied up in a nice little bow, and I think having another season would ruin it. I think it's either the director or it might be creator who's done other famous shows like American Horror Story and Glee, stuff like that. He even said, I wanted to do a mini series so I could walk away from it at the end.
Yeah.
And
do sort of set up a second season, but it's not really that. It's just kind of, it's more showing the future of the characters in it, and I don't think it needs to be renewed at all. I think it's left in a good place.
Yeah, it definitely could just end there, and it probably should, because it was nice. You got closure around the whole story, the story arc, and it was just the last shot was showing that they were going to make a second movie with the same actors, same director, same writer, based on sort of how they got to where they are, and like you can imagine how that would be. You don't need to physically see it, I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't really think the director wants to create another series, really. So I guess it's a possibility, but quite unlikely.
Yes. I really hope there isn't one. It would just ruin everything, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Because there's nowhere else for these characters to go.
Yeah.
The
only other thing, how spoilers, by the way. I know we don't usually say that, but obviously there are going to be spoilers for the show.
We used to.
But yeah, in the last episode when you assume that it's going to be Ernie's funeral, but it's actually Dick's, that sort of could open up a possibility for the second season, but I don't know.
Yeah. So,
shall we talk about an in-depth episode overview?
In true Entertainment of Excellence style?
Of course.
We actually watched the whole series
show.
this time.
Yeah, for full transparency, our first episode on Dirk Gently was not just the first episode of the show, it was reviewing the first episode of Dirk Gently. We hadn't watched any other episodes.
Ollie has, and I have, but I wasn't even on it.
And by the time we touched on it in episode 2, we'd watched episode 2.
Yeah.
I can't remember how many we did for Psychoville, but we certainly hadn't watched the whole thing.
Yeah, they're quite short though, so
yeah. But here we have watched the whole full amount of episodes
in 3 days.
Yeah,
we did it. There's not that many.
There's only 7, and they're only an hour each, so you could quite easily binge watch it.
Yeah.
First few are only 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It depends. It makes sense for the first 2 because it's technically a 2-parter. Did you think it made sense as a 2-parter? I think they could have just named them different things, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't think there was a need to put part 1 and part 2 because the whole thing is an overarching story. Like, I get it with, Adventure of the Week kind of stuff with maybe Doctor Who, where sometimes it's a 2-parter. Those make sense. Like, is Angels in Manhattan, is that 2-parter? Have I made that up?
I don't think so, but like...
Oh.
I don't know.
There is a Weeping Angels one that's 2 parts. But anyway, it didn't really need to say it was 2 parts. Ooh. It basically, it starts off really fast-paced, if you ask me. The first episode, super fast. And it kind of is all about Jack Costello, who seems to be the protagonist. It has I like the opening scene of him at a movie theatre watching basically the news about this rave about people wanting to become extras to get into the film industry. So that kind of sets up the premise for what Jack's wanting to do. And it's basically following him around trying to get in. So they wait outside the gates of studios trying to become extras. and then it basically leads to him being recruited in a bar by Ernie to work for Golden Tips, the petrol station, where he gets told that he'll basically be a prostitute, but will get a lot of money and can help him make connections. And it basically goes through that, and then he ends up like one of his clients is a casting director. It gives Jack a very small role that's like 2 lines, but it ends with him getting arrested by an undercover police officer.
Yeah. So yeah, the pace of the first one was quite fast, but
Yes.
I don't think it was too bad. I think you could sort of keep up with it, and
Oh yeah, it's just kind of brushed over some issues, I suppose, like the fact that his wife was pregnant and
yeah,
wanting a mortgage, because you kind of just forget about them anyway later on.
just like him.
There were
I quite
a
like
few...
this episode.
Oh yeah, it's a really good
same.
episode.
I was just going to say, because it's kind of the only one that primarily focuses on one character, because even in the second one, you're kind of bombarded with all these different storylines.
Yeah.
That's the same in the third one. This is pretty much just about Jack, which I think he's definitely protagonist in the first half of the season, but as it goes on, I think there's less of an emphasis on him.
Yeah. If this one feels the most... Actually, it's not character focused. This is definitely a plot focused episode, but it's easier to follow than some of the others because it is just Jack. So it's quite easy to get through. There's only like a couple of criticisms, like there's a bit of a cheesy bit where he says lensing at the same time as some other guy wanting to be an extra. Pretty cheesy.
I think that other guy was just cheesy in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, he could have been cut and nothing would have suffered because of it.
Luckily, he wasn't.
It was
in
a good way of
again.
establishing. Yeah, he wasn't. He just disappears.
Lensing.
It was a good way of establishing tone, though. I think it did pretty well of having all the music, the colors and costumes, and really good cinematography, which was occasionally spoiled by the editing, but that doesn't matter. It kind of set up the tone of like, wow, this is an amazing town and all that stuff, and then but also showing the kind of prostitution side and how much people do to get into the industry. So it was a good tone establisher as well.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty good opening episode, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same here.
But what I suppose another criticism I wish is you don't notice it until you watch the next episode, is that maybe they could have woven in some of the other characters who eventually become really...
Yeah, it feels like it's very much focused on Jack, but later on, and even just in the second episode, you have a lot of other characters introduced, and you feel that maybe they could have benefited from the same amount of background as Jack.
Yeah.
That's why I don't think it really works if you see it as a two-parter, because you're suddenly introduced to all these characters in the second episode that haven't really appeared at all in the first part.
Yeah.
So I think it would have just played better if they were just completely separate episodes.
And they kind of
are, but
yeah,
I don't know why they've put it like that.
It starts off as well. I think like some of the characters feel like they're just going to get thrown away. Like the introduction to Archie of Jack goes to like a smutty film theatre for gay porn, basically, and then finds that Archie is... I'm going to call him a freelance prostitute. I'm sure that's a very fancy term. And he basically ends up recruiting him for the petrol station because Jack had refused to do some gay stuff. But you feel like that's just Jack's way of being able to tiptoe around having to do anything with men. But then it turns out that he's this massively major character later on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That bit I thought was a bit cheesy as well when he was dressed up as the policeman. It's like, see, I am a good actor.
Yeah, that was not good at all.
I think all scenes in that bar were just kind of... I didn't like them. Because there was also the bit in near the end with his wife, but we'll come to that later.
Oh yeah, I really hated that. So yeah.
We also get introduced to the director Raymond, who's half Asian.
Which is pretty
Don't
much...
worry though, we won't need to tell you, I promise. He mentions it every second he can.
Oh, by the way, did you know that Raymond's half Asian? I don't know. You might want to know that before you go.
Really?
Well, we might just want to remind our listeners in case they want to go and watch it, or in case they have watched it and have forgotten it, because it's quite important.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Also, he's half Asian,
So,
by the way.
Yeah. That's the main thing I took away from this.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the weird things, is that like Archie's a major character, but they felt like they had to introduce him using the plot. But then with Raymond and Camille, his girlfriend, they are just kind of shown in separate scenes before it's necessary for them to be talking to Jack. And to be honest, they could have had a scene with Archie, because then you could have the thing in the movie theatre where you can go, oh yeah, it's that guy.
Yeah.
Maybe it didn't need that. Maybe we're just nitpicking. I don't know.
Who knows?
That's our job.
Yeah. Also, something that was a bit odd was that the opening title sequence wasn't there in the first one, but it was in the second. Which,
Yeah.
You know, that's not the biggest criticism I have of this, obviously, but it was a bit weird to see absolutely nothing in the first one, and then from episodes 2 to 7 have this opening sequence.
Yeah.
Maybe that's because the first episode was just a giant cold opening.
Yeah.
Maybe. Also, probably because they didn't have all the characters in yet. Let's see. Oh, yeah, because Camille has the whole thing of she manages to get a role, doesn't she? So you see Camille, she's this black actress, and she's been doing loads of training. She's like the best out of this class of someone called Ellen Kincaid, and she ends up getting a role as like a handmaiden, I think it's called. But basically, she gets told to do the line in a jokey way by the director, or basically, you know, a more black way, as he probably was going to say. So she ends up having to fall into this stereotype, which obviously she doesn't enjoy. So she's just been taught to be a normal actress. So that kind of sets up some of the stuff of them wanting to portray minorities differently and things like that, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, it also introduces Henry Wilson.
Oh, yeah.
Who is played by Jim Parsons. And I was worried because obviously, I mean, Big Bang Theory, Jim Parsons plays Sheldon.
Bazinga.
Bazinga. It's not exactly the greatest TV show, but I actually really like Jim Parsons acting in this as Henry Wilson, because I really hated him. And that's a good thing.
No.
I promise it's a good thing.
No, he really he really was exceptionally good, and if he's anything like the real Henry Wilson was, then holy heck.
They kept calling him slimy, and there isn't a better description for that.
Yeah, even he got absolutely everything right, and even the people that made him look like the real Henry Wilson did an incredible job. Even down to like the overly greased, slicked back hair, the suits he wears, you know.
Basically, I thought I was like, Jim Parsons looks a bit odd, but then you look at a picture of Henry Wilson and you're like, oh, okay, makes sense now.
Yeah,
because he does look a lot like him.
Yeah. So let's keep going, I guess.
Yeah. Episode 3, which I enjoyed, Ben and Ollie didn't enjoy it so much, is the party we mentioned before, the George Cukor party. And this is where kind of the characters end up having to bump heads with each other because both Jack and Archie's boyfriend, who he meets through the petrol station, prostitution thing, are both after the same role. Because what role are they after? Actually, I can't remember.
It was the lead romantic role in Peg.
Oh, they actually
the
started
boyfriend.
making Peg by that point. Oh yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, Archie, the guy that Jack recruited, is a screenwriter, but he's also black, so he never gets to go in and see them in case he's worried that they'll discount his script because of his race, basically. But they pick Peg to do, and both Jack and Roy, or Rock as he becomes known, want this role. So you kind of see them going about the party and both trying to do stuff to get this role. With, ironically, Jack tries to get Henry to hire him because he wants him to be his agent, but ends up refusing when Henry asks him for sexual favors.
And I can't remember exactly which episode it was. I think it might have been the third episode, or maybe the fourth. I'm tired. But you think there's going to be a lot of rivalry between Rock and Jack, but it turns out that they're both really nice people and are supportive of each other. And ultimately, when Jack does get the role, Rock supports him. Jack's happy for Rock that he then ultimately gets another role in the film, and they become very good friends. So, yeah.
I wasn't a massive fan of this episode. I thought the pacing was quite slow. It was kind of just prolonged. But a scene that I did like was what's she called? Claire Wood, when she's at the table with her parents and she's asking if she can audition for the part. I like that scene, but I think that they kind of present her parents as being really evil at the start, but then as it progresses, they kind of become less so. And know that her mum, when Ace has a heart attack, she kind of takes over and there's a lot more liberal with the casting. But then eventually Ace starts to support her as well. So I did like that scene in kind of illustrating how corrupt, like the owner of the company is. But I don't think it was kind of sustained throughout the whole season.
Yeah.
I think another thing I noticed was there were a lot of kind of bad characters that suddenly become good at the end, which is kind of annoying. It's like you can't just redeem these people. Like Ollie mentioned, Ace's heart attack. Like before that, he just wanted money and didn't want Archie's name to be on the film because he was black and they'd lose money and stuff like this. But then all he needs is a heart attack and then to come out of a coma to then be not racist.
Yeah.
It's kind of odd.
Yeah.
And also Henry Wilson at the end gets a redemption thing where he's like, oh, I'm not going to treat people badly anymore. I made a vow on my knees. It's like, okay, why are we trying to make this guy good?
Yeah, it's not even so much that everyone becomes good. Like, a good redemption arc can be done effectively and can really help enhance the humanity of the characters. But here, especially with Ace, I'd say, it's more like a sudden just complete 180 on how his character was before, because he was presented as being very, very evil, very corrupt, having an affair with, and all of these things. And then once he's out of his heart attack, and before he goes in his heart and has his heart attack, he's very, very adamant that no, this movie is not going to be made. I do not support this. And the whole thing is they're having to quickly make the movie while he's still in a coma because they're scared he'll find out and halt it.
Even like that when he immediately after he comes out, because he kind of walks and he still gains the idea of the film being made and kind of orders his wife to go and cook for him.
Yeah.
And suddenly he does just have this sudden transformation where I don't know if it's his wife that has an influence over him, but that wasn't sustained very well, I don't think.
Yeah, it would have been better if you'd seen him maybe like consider making the movie beforehand, but then sort of like convince himself that it's wrong because of like the societal pressures at the time. And it's really weird because his wife Avis is sort of shown to be like not good because she's obviously is presented to be evil like Ace, but really she becomes the bad guy whenever he is in his coma, and to a degree, yeah, that sort of makes sense. She's having to run the studio how her husband would want it, but then like it took taking like Eleanor Roosevelt, like a completely different character, with like a lot of importance to actually make her even consider changing her mind. And I don't really think that's consistent with the character we saw beforehand. But yeah, just a little nitpick.
Yeah. I think that it's not entirely related, but with a similar sort of transformation that Henry has.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just because of like how unlikable the character is, but I do always think that he still has corrupt motives. So even when he's trying to convince them when he's convincing them that he's changed, it's almost like a certain element of him being cynical in doing that. Like when he helps out Jack, that's almost just for himself to become the producer.
Yeah.
I think
I didn't enjoy the first 3 episodes as much as the rest of the season. I'm only grouping them together because we watched those in one batch.
Yeah.
But I do think that it's almost as if the later episodes kind of make them better because you start to understand the story of the characters that are especially introduced in episode 2 and 3 a bit more. I really enjoyed the next on screen tests, but I mean, there were solid episodes, just not as good as sort of the middle ones.
Yeah.
Solid episodes. Just like
Meg
our
was the best episode,
ones.
if you ask me. It's also, I know it's the best reviewed, but I did like that episode, kind of artistically as well.
Yeah.
Or should we talk about episodes 4 and 5 first? We're skipping 2 actually.
That's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Screen Tests was a really good episode. It basically shows them doing some screen tests, like Rock Hudson screen tests and Jack's, and all this stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier.
It's it is enjoyable to watch them, and it's actually where you start rooting for the characters as well. Because to be honest, before that I didn't really care because there were so many, and it's like I don't really know that much about them, and I'm not sure if I care if they succeed. But when you actually start to see them trying, I think I felt a bit more empathy for them, and it was really helpful. Oh yes, there was one odd thing about this this episode was where Avis is still being shown as the bad guy, and so she says she wants to cast her daughter because she's white, but I don't know if you picked up on this, but I just thought it was really weird that then suddenly Eleanor Roosevelt just swoops in and is like, oh no, you should make the lead black. It's like, okay, you need to get the first lady to come in. It's such an odd, like, is it Deus Ex Machina that's God from the Machine, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. It was just like, wow, you had to get the first lady to swoop in out of absolutely nowhere, then disappear and not be mentioned ever again.
Yeah,
it's
really odd.
There's a lot of that throughout the series, I guess. That there's a few instances where just something completely coincidental comes up that just happens to change the plot. and it's almost as if the writers couldn't find more creative ways to get the characters to change their minds. Like, I'm sure you could have done something with, like, Avis questioning her own motives, for example, and saying, well, is it worth it? Or maybe had, like, some of the other characters convince her, but no, you had to introduce someone completely new and then take them out of the plot completely afterwards.
Yeah, I've got a list of kind of undeveloped stories, which I'll talk about at the end, but I also thought this episode was pretty funny as well. You know, with
Rock
Rock's audition
screen test.
Yeah,
he did like 67 takes, I think they said.
He keeps forgetting his lines, and he's just not a good actor.
But then you have Henry threatening Avis because he has the pictures of her at the gas station.
Oh yeah.
Originally, she's like, we'll cast this guy. Then the next screen test is Jack. So she's kind of conflicted there.
And she does end up casting Jack.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't
was terrible.
Yeah.
There is quite a bit of nepotism in the casting, though, because he still gets a part, and then pretty much everyone that's in this circle is eventually cast in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So after that, it goes into the next episode where obviously Avis does agree to cast Camille. So they changed their name to Meg to make it clear they're not basing it on a real person because Peg was white. And it's kind of obvious. It's like, okay, the last episode tried to end on a cliffhanger of like, oh, who will Avis choose? But I mean, if you've got Eleanor Roosevelt to come in and tell you to cast a black lead, I couldn't see them not doing it. So I don't know why it left it on a cliffhanger. It was quite obvious. But what is good about it is that there are actual consequences of casting Camille. They don't just gloss over that. Because sometimes they make things look too good. But one, Camille gets called by Hattie McDaniel to congratulate her, but then afterwards she also gets called by some racist guy and they start receiving like death threats and stuff like that. And A Studios gets picketed, and they have to give Meg a really small budget because they're worried it won't be able to be shown in most movie theaters in the South. So I do like answers to casting Camille, because that would have happened in 1948. I'd be up for that.
Because I think one of the things we highlighted I think it's the first or second episode, that they were kind of presenting more equality than was actually apparent.
Yeah.
But especially in this episode, it is kind of dealing with the discrimination. And was it the episode 6 with that? The opening?
Yeah, it's episode 6 that happens.
Yeah. I do think that they deal with that quite well.
Yeah. Yeah, because at first it looked like it was too optimistic, and whilst in a sense that's alright, it felt maybe like it was devaluing and like some of the struggles that people, that minorities at the time had to go through. But then, like, as it progresses, it shows that that's more a view of how the characters wanted it to be, and then you get hit in the later episodes with the reality of how people would react. And then it glosses over it a bit at the end when it became a big hit. But to be fair, like, that's going to happen anyway, given it's an optimistic show, I guess.
But this is where it fully explains what it's doing, and kind of so you get a good table read scene where they read the script. That was cool, a lot of emotion, etc. But they basically decide that they need to change the ending of Meg so that she doesn't kill herself. Because I think Dick says, like, if you see this struggling black girl trying to do her best to get in a film and then she doesn't get in and kills herself, what message does that send to young black women around the world?
Promoting giving up.
Yeah, and because they change what actually happened, it's kind of like I assume it's supposed to be a representation of this TV show itself, where obviously in real life they would have massively failed trying to get this through with a diverse cast and a half Asian director.
Oh, did you know he was half Asian as well? Like, wow.
So I think they use this to explain the goals of this show.
Yeah.
To kind of have role models, although it's more of a what if, because nowadays there are a lot more role models for minorities in films and stuff. Although it's still not perfect, the Oscars I think are still like massively white and even male dominated.
The only thing about the actual film itself is it never really actually shows what happens in the rest of the film. It kind of presents the whole bit at the end, but like in the last episode when they're praising anime, kind of like what actually was her role, they never really show any of that.
Yeah, it was really odd. They were like, "Oh yeah, this is really well deserved for this supporting actress," but we don't get told anything of her character. Don't really get to see any of her acting.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I guess we'll just assume that she deserves this.
We're only really shown little clips of the film throughout the series, and then just obviously the not jumping off the Hollywood sign, but which gets a bit weird, like especially in the last episode. I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but like it's against movies such as like Miracle on 34th Street, and like
Great Expectations.
Yeah, you're just like, why? What does this movie have that is better than those? All you're really shown is the jumping off, or sorry, not jumping off the Hollywood sign. And
I get that they wouldn't want to just show the whole film, but it's kind of
just like
clips a bit underdeveloped.
I mean, we see enough for all the rest of them. Like we see some scenes with Jack and with Camille doing their parts. Even see the scene with Rockin.
Yeah.
Who I assume has fewer lines than Anna May Wong, but we just don't know if we even get a single.
The Ernie scene.
The Ernie scene as well. That actually starts off the montage, doesn't it, of Meg?
Yeah.
With his acting, and then it goes straight into the scene. That was cool. Yeah. I did like the montage. It's just that I guess we just wanted more to show what Anna May Wong did.
I feel
unless
maybe...
she wasn't it, and we just completely forgot.
No, I don't think we saw it.
I don't think so.
What would have been cool is maybe if they'd shown a little bit of like the opening of the film and how they were going to introduce the characters, like just a little bit of that maybe, and then obviously a bit of Anna May Wong. And yeah, it just felt like you are supposed to know why this film was great and why it deserved all of these things, when really you don't. You're just rooting for the characters.
Yeah. But we do get a lot of other stuff in Meg, though. A lot of big things happen. For example, Rock and Archie end up moving in together, which was obviously a big deal in the 40s for a gay couple to get a house together. Ace comes out of his heart attack and and his lawyer and some other people want him to burn all the film for Meg. Dick Samuels comes out as gay to Ace, which Ace was a bit assistant of Ace Pictures, and then Ace dies. He literally just does some good stuff, then dies. Poor guy.
Oh,
yeah,
and killed him.
yeah.
When we were watching, I think I made a remark or something like, "Oh wow, he I think he was like lying in his bed, and you were getting the impression he was dying, and I was just like, wow, what? He better be dead."
And he was.
And then he was. So it's just wow, I killed Ace Amberg.
And then the rest of the episodes to deteriorate.
Yeah, because then the lawyer and stuff burn all the Meg footage.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I'm responsible for all of the bad things that happened.
Obviously.
Yeah.
But it's okay because, surprise, surprise, at the start of the next episode, the chief editor has spare footage. Who would have guessed?
Yeah, another stupid Deus Ex Machina that, like, it's once they'd burnt the film and you had 2 episodes left. Or was it one episode?
One episode.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's an episode left. You know it's going to be shown, so why even have that whole subplot anyway? You know?
Yeah.
Oh, and which episode was it? Which episode was it where he found out that his wife was cheating on him?
Oh, we forgot that. That was episode 5.
5.
Where we said we'd talk about that later and then forgot.
So basically what happened...
So this is the bar scene.
Yeah, so they were trying to find...
Not the dreaded bar.
Yeah, so the context is that they'd gone over budget and they needed $25,000 quickly. And ultimately, good old Ernie gave it to them. But they were essentially going to... I'm assuming they were going to try and go back into becoming prostitutes again. But Jack was like, no, I've got a wife. You know, I've said...
And Raymond.
Yeah, and who's half Asian. But
it's kind of weird that none of the other characters voice concern about it, seeing as they all have partners. But
it's basically that he wants to be a good man, and he's like, well, I've got a wife, we've got kids on the way, you know, I can't do this. Looks over, other side of the bar, there's his wife cheating on him right in front of him.
It's literally 2 seconds after. It's like, okay, so I guess we could solve that problem then. And then he goes home and his wife's like, oh yeah, I've been cheating on you with this guy for ages, and by the way, the kids aren't yours, they're his. It's like, oh, okay. Well, that's an easy way to solve the problem, isn't it?
By the way, the guy that I've been cheating on with, his voice sounds like mine did on the original podcast.
It's so high-pitched, it's ridiculous.
Like, listen to episode 1 or something of Entertainment of Excellence and listen to Ollie. That's what it sounds like. Oh no, I guess you're going to beat me up now. I'm not going to beat you up. Oh, you guess you are a good man then.
It's ridiculous.
And then, like, the scene where Jack finally sort of breaks up with his wife. His wife's going to go, and they're sort of like, well, we'll still be part of each other's lives. Like, that's a sort of nice scene. It's just a shame they didn't gloss over the fact that the kids weren't his. I felt like that was an elephant in the room that they didn't go over as much as they should have. I think, like, when he was first told that, Jack was like upset and walked out and slept on the couch of Archie and Rock. But after that, he just seems completely unfazed by it, I think, which, I don't know. That's just felt weird.
Mean, he had said earlier that he didn't love his wife anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, but to be fair, he was expecting kids, you know, and he thought they were his. But yeah.
Oh, that was great. That was the start, wasn't it? It's like, oh, we need a mortgage. We're low on money. Oh no, this kid isn't going to help. Go to the doctor. Oh, it's twins.
Yeah.
So okay, how many more things have to go bad?
Yeah. Another the shots, well, not shots, but scenes that I really liked. I think it was in Meg. You know when there's Archie and Rock.
Yeah.
And you like, for a brief second, you think he's gonna like propose to him, but then you just suddenly realize, oh wait, no.
It's a key.
Yeah.
To the apartment.
I think that just kind of enforced the nature of that is addressed quite a lot in the last episodes.
Yeah. Because more of the earlier ones are the struggles that black people would go through. So Meg's opens with Avis's house gets a burning cross outside it. There's a Molotov cocktail thrown in to Archie's house. There's pickets and all of that stuff. And you also saw Camille's struggles earlier, and Archie not wanting to be taken on as a screenwriter because he was black. So then they kind of used the last episode to address issues with homosexuality at the time, because obviously it's easier to hide that than your race.
Yeah.
So it basically, episode 7, most of it is, oh, they get Meg back, blah, 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 Meg's great. And then the rest of it is all the Oscars. And Archie basically decides to go with Rock, as a couple. So it's kind of interesting to explore how that was done. So, reporters refuse to talk to them. And when Archie wins it. Basically, they all win Oscars, except Jack. Spoilers.
Yeah.
When he goes on and does his speech, he says he dedicates it to Rock's partner, and then people boo, and he's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm too happy. And then people suddenly forget. That's kind of weird, but it makes sense that people would boo at the time. I mean,
yeah.
I don't think there was as much...
They don't really forget. Because then you see the scene with Rock and Henry, and it's like, oh, you haven't had many major parts. I mean, not that he had any major parts before.
Oh, yeah. But I meant the crowd. But yeah, they do. Rock doesn't get many parts at all.
But then it's...
Yeah, but he never has. He's just a bad actor.
It's true that he never had.
He's absolutely terrible. But then again, the crowd did boo, but I don't think there was anywhere near as much outrage as there would have been in the actual 1940s, which I don't think is really an issue, to be fair, given that the whole series is premised on a sort of what-if scenario.
But it was illegal.
Yeah, I know, and neither of them got arrested. So,
it's just immediately suppressed.
Yeah.
It was on the radio and
that's
everything.
even weirder with the end being that Henry Wilson wants to make a movie about two gay lovers, an actual romance story. And it's kind of weird that you just have to assume that works, even though it's technically illegal. But
you don't have to assume, you have to wait for season 2.
About that. No, please.
Okay, so we're approaching an hour. We're about 53 minutes now, so we might, I guess, have to skip recommendations for this week. So,
no,
we'll do someone next week. But so I don't know. In the last 5-10 minutes or so, I guess let's just sum it all up and say what we liked about the series as a whole, what we didn't like, and then give it a rating, I guess. So, Ollie, you said you had some stuff written down. Let's have a listen.
Oh yeah,
you had stories that went nowhere.
Yeah, most of them have been brought up. There wasn't that much. Well, I mean, there are. I haven't got all of them. The only ones that I wrote down were the not seeing any of Anime Wong in the film, and then that kind of the whole of the last episode, but that's kind of subtle. And then the rest are just kind of about people's relationships. So Jack and his wife, which we've talked about. And then Dick's relationship is kind of just suddenly brought up, I think, in the penultimate episode.
Oh yeah, he just says that he's got a partner and
and then he talks at the funeral. But I know that Dick isn't one of the major characters, but he actually was one of my favourites, and they just didn't do much with that.
Yeah,
and then the last one was just.
Yeah, Dick was an interesting character because he had the whole conflict over him. He didn't want to accept that he was gay. So, I mean, the first time is when Rock is trying to get with him basically just so he can get a part. But Dick has to be extremely drunk for that to happen. And then he also stops it when he realizes that he feels like he can't be gay.
Yeah.
So they could have accepting his sexuality was quite a big thing, but they didn't do much with it.
Yeah, and it would have been nice because you did see him meet
that
his
was
partner at the bar at the end, but it would have been nice to see them like together, maybe even once. You know, it's just out of the blue that wow, he's his partner now, talking at his funeral. Okay, right.
Oh yeah, he does talk at his funeral.
Then the last one was just Ernie, and mostly just him with, what was she called again? The
Ellen Kincaid.
Yeah. And then suddenly, he just suddenly has cancer, and then
that goes nowhere, doesn't it?
No, yeah, that's just all thrown in.
Sorry, actually, Dick
episode.
dies of cancer.
Yeah. So most of the things were about kind of relationships with people, but a lot of them are just kind of thrown at you in the last few episodes, and then not much happened with them.
Yeah.
So, I guess. Well, what do we like as a whole about it?
General things. Cinematography was good. Good colors, costumes, some nice shots as well. Stuff like that. The soundtrack was a bop.
Yeah.
Some great songs, and fit the time. It was a good. I mean, it was just good drama, I suppose. And you do it does take a while to get to know the characters, but once you do actually end up rooting for them. So that was pretty good as well, I suppose. Some good drama. But I think I just wish they'd marketed it differently, because it kind of says they marked it as a peek behind the curtain of what it was like in Hollywood post World War II. But it is more of a glamorous what if. So I was expecting like really to be a bit more dark, so with the prostitution and stuff, but I also thought that maybe they'd end up doing outrageous things that would actually lead nowhere, because I'm sure that did happen most of the time. But it kind of implies like all you need to do is like become a prostitute and do all this shady stuff, and then you can get big in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Which makes you think, makes you question how some people got certain roles in films, if that's the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole morality issue was kind of weird, but I guess like it was never presented in like a positive light or a negative light. I think it was just sort of accepted as a thing that happens, and it did happen at the time, so I guess that's not really an issue.
I found a lot of the sort of minor characters more relatable. I think quite a few of the main characters, I think it was partly deliberately, were just kind of one-dimensional, whereas characters like Ernie and Dick and even Avis, I thought really strong.
There were times.
Yeah, that is true. Actually, the supporting characters seemed more developed than the main cast, which is a bit odd.
Yeah, there were definitely times when you'd have had maybe a couple scenes with like Ellen and Dick and Avis and everyone, and then it kind of cuts back to like Jack, and he seems like really flat and one-dimensional in comparison. You're like, oh, we thought this was going to be the main character, but no, he isn't. Which could be positive and negative, but I guess it's good in that they are fleshing out the minor characters more, and they're not just there for the sake of it.
Yeah.
I thought it was really good. I think I like the style of kind of changing what actually happened, because the thing that I was going to recommend, I won't go into too much detail, but it's not something I've watched recently. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's kind of similar to this in the way that it changes reality. Obviously, it's set a bit after because it's about the Sharon Tate murders, but I think that they're both quite interested in interpreting like the past of Hollywood in a different way.
Yeah.
And then I guess we've said a lot of criticisms, but what would you say with them are the main ones?
I think just maybe everything going too well.
Yeah.
and not developing the main characters enough, maybe.
Hmm.
I think they're the major ones.
Yeah.
And the only other one go on.
There you go.
Oh, I was just gonna say that the only other one I'd say would be just there was so many shortcuts taken that seemed lazy using Deus Ex Machina. Like, though you did not need Eleanor Roosevelt to change Avis's mind. You didn't need to talk about his wife cheating and then turn around and she's cheating on him right there. You didn't need the whole plot where the film's going to be burned and guess what? There's a backup copy, and a lot of these just little shortcuts just kind of, they weren't major, but they did kind of build up and made me personally get annoyed. I don't know.
I was just going to say, apart from like the underdeveloped storylines that I talked about, it's just, I think that didn't really, first 3 episodes I think were not as enjoyable as the other ones. I think partly just because it like suddenly introduced all these characters, which I know they do tell the storyline of as it progresses, but I think if you're watching, don't sort of be put off by the start, because especially the 4th, 5th and 6th episodes I thought were really good.
Yeah. Cool. So I guess, is there anything else anyone wants to say about it?
No.
Should we do our rating?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we need to do a rating.
Yeah, let's go.
It's a 7.6 on IMDb.
I'd give it a 7.5.
I'll give it a 7.4.
Ooh.
Oh, I was going to give it a 7.0, so this is going to be
Fun maths.
fun maths. Let's go, because I'm not smart enough to work it out in my head.
It's okay, I've got a calculator on me.
Oh, so have I. Whoa, 7.3.
Yep.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Sure. Cool. So, I guess thanks for listening. We do have a couple of things that we've changed since last week. We've updated the website. We have a little area you can go and check out the episodes, see the Hall of Fame. We've only problem with that is we've done only 3 horror movies, so therefore Birdemic is a top-rated horror apparently. We now have an Instagram, which is also at ERV Podcast, the same as our Twitter, and we're gonna post some clips from the shows there on Twitter as well. Again, feel free to contact us or message us or leave a comment or whatever, especially you, Lewis G, because you're a G. And I guess just share this if you like it. I'm not going to plug any more, so I guess thanks for listening. Alright, see you.
Cool. Alright, see you.
See you.
Yeah, that's 16.